Children of anti-vaxxers who grew up and got yourselves vaccinated, what's your story? How did your parents take it? Serious. My parents used to not vaccinate me or any of my 4 siblings, but when I was like 3 years old me and my siblings all came down with whooping cough. It scarred my lungs and I have yellow stains on my teeth because the high fevers cook my adult teeth inside my head. My parents vaccinated us after that. I am not and have never been mad or spiteful to my parents for not vaccinating me. I don't really consider them anti-vaxxers. My parents were very young when they had me and they were also very impoverished. They were real big hippies and believed that anything I needed, including immunity, God would provide. Me and all of my siblings were raised really well and my parents have always been very loving. They were just naive and doing what they thought was best for me and my siblings. Jesus Christ. 5 kids with whooping cough. That must have been a nightmare for your parents. If you're here to tell me something along the lines of if only there was a way to prevent whooping cough and the parents are dumb, please refer to the 10+ people before you in this very thread who have done the exact same thing. My story sort of has a twist where if I hadn't gone against their wishes, I could be seriously ill or dead beyond the normal threat. My parents were against the MMR vaccination as my older brother was diagnosed with Asperger's shortly after he received it. I'm the youngest child and so never got the jab. Even though mumps actually caused my mum to go half deaf as a teenager, it always made me uncomfortable knowing I wasn't protected and I was in strong mind to do it eventually. But of course it's hard going against your parents' beliefs when they felt so strongly at what had happened to them. To me it felt like a form of denial of the autism in the family which they see as much worse than it is. My brother is an amazing guy and they should give him more credit. Before you go to uni you have to get a meningitis jab. While I was at the doctor's, the doctor, very much reminded me of Emma Thompson, suggested giving me the MMR. I told her my parents were against it and she said she'd give it to me now and then in a few months I could tell them and prove that I was absolutely fine. So I did that. A few months after receiving the full vaccination, my flatmate and close friend got diagnosed with rubella. It spread all over her body causing glandular and scarlet fever. She spent over a month in hospital and was in a fatal position. If I hadn't done it at that moment, I could have been in serious trouble. And rubella isn't common here at all. So if in doubt about going behind their backs, do it for yourself and your own safety and that's the only excuse you need. I'm old enough to have had rubella as a child. The biggest problem was it was caused severe birth defects if a pregnant woman caught it. I was just plain sick for a few days. Your flatmate was probably seen by an older doctor who knew what she was seeing. Young docs don't get to see these things anymore. My mom is against vaccines and I grew up in a very against vaccine school and was treated by homeopathic and holistic doctors. I used to believe all that crap. Then I started med school and changed my mind to vaccines aren't bad but they aren't necessary. Then I did a rotating at a pediatric hospital in the neurological area. That was a huge eye-opener. Meningitis is an awful disease and antivax never talk about it. The children I saw were the ones that survived and had brain damage afterwards. It was awful to see kids that could have had a perfectly normal life to end up like that. A coworker's brother-in-law ended up brain dead from meningitis. He and his flatmate thought he had the flu in the morning. In the afternoon they found him unconscious. His life support was switched off after 2 weeks. I'm in my early-ish 20s and I have never had vaccines. However, I am very much for them. I'm actually embarrassed that I don't have them. My parents didn't vaccinate me as a child for a legitimate medical reason, so they say, but my brother was not vaccinated either. I am pretty sure I can get them now, regardless of if the medical situation is the truth or not. I'm on the search for a general doctor in my new state right now to ask questions and get vaccinated. I'm curious if there were any risks involved in getting vaccinated as an adult. The only thing to make sure of is that the reason you weren't vaccinated was because of an allergy. My husband's parents are pro-science, pro-vaccine, but because of his congenital condition and a very specific allergy, there was one vaccine he wasn't able to get, which is why herd immunity is so important. When the HPV vaccine came out, there was a bunch of stories on the news about girls having poor reactions to it, getting seizures, comas. Most of it nonsense, but my mother saw the news stories and chose not to get me vaccinated. But then, right after college I had a brief bout of thyroid cancer, and decided I would take every precaution I could to not get more cancer, so I got the shots. I think at the time I didn't tell my mom, but afterward it came up. She was more huffy than anything else, and defended her thoughts at the time, but accepted my decision and reasoning. Also, there was the argument that it would make girls more promiscuous and it would encourage consequence-free freaking. Utter nonsense. My mum is non-believer of vaccines. I am only 16, but I believe that scientists and doctors know what they are doing more than what my mum does. As of this moment I will vaccinate myself when I can, and my kids. I am able to get myself vaccinated at 16 without parental consent, at least I think I am. But what is stopping me is my relationship to my mum and her wishes for me to keep things natural. Because of this, I will do it when I have moved out and without my parents and I in the same household. I am from New Zealand. Why my spelling of mum is with a U. New Zealand has no problems with 16-year-olds visiting doctors by themselves, but I haven't looked into whether a parent would have to sign a statement saying whether they are okay with this or not. It's good you have your own thoughts and feelings on the matter. If it makes you feel any better, I had autism way before any of my vaccinations. My parents never explicitly said they were anti-vaccine to me, but I was never vaccinated as a child. I actually caught measles, mumps and rubella on separate occasions, luckily diagnosed quickly enough to not cause any major health implications long term, but still a pretty miserable experience each time. So yeah, thanks for that. I've since had the vaccines, despite in theory having an immune system that could handle them. I was vaccinated when I was a baby as part of a mandatory vaccination program in the Soviet Union, but my parents wouldn't get boosters after we moved to the States. My family is pathologically distrustful of doctors and medication of any kind and prefers homeopathy and alternative medicines. I didn't realize I wasn't fully vaccinated until I went in for a physical in college. Up till then, I'd just assumed I'd been fully vaccinated in Russia, because that's what my parents told me. I got all my shots up to date and I just never mentioned it to my parents. Their anti-medicine stance has softened as they age, but I generally avoid the topic because I can't handle their bulls and it never goes anywhere anyway. That said, I had a baby this past December in the middle of a really bad flu season and I told my parents that they weren't allowed to see the baby until they could produce proof of a flu shot. This is absolutely something they'd lie about, so yes, I demanded written proof. They both got one as soon as they realized I was serious. Their anti-medicine stance has softened as they age. Probably has something to do with deteriorating health and needing that medicine now that they're not in perfect young person health. My mum is a well-educated woman, master level, so people are surprised when I tell them my mother never got me immunized. I think my mum never actually truly believed that vaccines were bad. I just think she easily falls for anything that is against mainstream and being anti-vax ticked the box. She has always enjoyed going against the grain. For example, she doesn't believe in climate change and is very transphobic, but none of her arguments ever hold up when you question her about them. When my sister was 19 she got the mumps and ended up in hospital. At that point she got all of her immunizations up to date. When I decided I wanted to be a nurse I needed to get my immunizations up to date. It was very pricey as you had to pay if you missed the free immunization in high school. I wish she had just put our health before her hippie identify. Until this day when I ask her why she didn't immunize us she doesn't have an answer. My mom had a child who became brain damaged during birth due to a hole in the umbilical cord. She became convinced that there was some malpractice cover-up and gradually that all of medicine is one big conspiracy. I stopped getting vaccines around 10 due to a mysterious ailment I had that turned out to be recurrent benign positional paroxysmal vertigo. For some reason doctors couldn't figure it out and thought I had brain cancer. My mom became convinced it was vaccine related and claimed she traced my vaccine and it was a bad batch that had killed a boy who got it. I stopped getting vaccines and turned in forms to school every year claiming personal objection exemption from all vaccines from that point on. I ended up deciding to become a biomedical scientist and enrolled in a PhD program. The Hep B vaccine was recommended for all students and I received the first course of the vaccine, and then mentioned it to my mom. She flipped the frick out. She told me she couldn't believe I would do something so stupid, and that there were so many bad reactions I could have and they didn't all happen immediately. I started reading horror stories online about bad Hep B shot reactions, and I panicked. I really thought I may have done something really stupid. This was pretty ironic since I was in a science PhD program, but I was still making sense of what part of my childhood brainwashing was true and still coming to my own belief system. In my hesitation uncertainly, I failed to get the next dose of the Hep B shot in the required time window. I did intend to get it, but I forgot about it in the craziness of grad school. Fast forward to my 3rd year, I was studying liver cancer and working with a liver cancer cell line called Hep3b. I was reading the literature and stumbled on a paper that said that scientists had found that Hep3b cells are infected with live hepatitis B virus. That was really terrifying because I had been working with them for months and definitely had not taken the precautions you are supposed would take if you are working with active human pathogens. But the fact that I passed up a free Hep shot and could have stupidly contracted Hep really crystallized the importance of vaccines for me that day. I didn't ever have obvious symptoms of Hep, but nonetheless I worried that I might have it up until I got pregnant with my daughter and tested negative during the prenatal tests. Needless to say, my daughter has gotten 100% of her vaccines and will continue to. I chose for her a pediatrician who refuses to see patients who don't get all of their vaccines on schedule. I don't even want to share a waiting room with unvaxxed kids. As for my mom, I don't talk to her anymore. That lady is batshit crazy. Glad you are okay. Your mentor and uni safety office seriously failed you by not having a specimen handling and disposal protocol where you were informed of the risks. No grad student, or anyone in any biomed lab, should be blinded as to the risks or not use universal precautions against infectious disease. My mom got all my vaccinations when I was really little, but never took me in for my pre-middle school physical, and I was never really sure why. I have no idea why the school let me enroll without the physical shots having been done. When I moved in with my dad, I had to get caught up pretty quickly. I would go in, get 4 shots, which was the max, and then come back in a few weeks. I got everything I needed, and a few that I didn't need but my dad wanted me to have. My mom never seemed to have an opinion about it, just shrugged it off. She and him didn't communicate much, so they were always doing stuff without asking the other. One time while we were out of state, he took me to a clinic being held at a school to get a vaccination. Neither me nor my mother knew that this was planned. If you're under 26 and not vaccinated, pick up the phone and schedule yourself for a nurse's visit ASAP. In the US, childhood vaccines are well reimbursed until age 26. After that it becomes harder to have them covered. This includes Gardasil, the anti-HPV cervical cancer vaccine series. Not only is Gardasil not covered after 26, many doctors and clinics won't even give it after 26. I'm turning 18 in 4 months. Probably gonna get vaccinated. Mother didn't want me vaccinated for God knows why, but I got my chickenpox vaccine last year to volunteer at a hospital. I want to major in biology and from what I understand, I'll need to be vaccinated for it. You should have been fully vaccinated to volunteer at a hospital. I'm surprised they allowed you through the doors. I am 55 years old and I realize something. There were no anti-vaxxers when I was a kid. We all got vaccinated. In fact, we were the last group to get the smallpox vaccine. What is the point I am trying to make? That anti-vaxxers themselves were in all likelihood vaccinated as children and then they grew up apparently healthy but paranoid about the process. How truly fascinating. When I was a child, I had a baby sibling who began exhibiting strange symptoms and died shortly after a round of immunizations. There was not a conclusive autopsy. It was called SIDS. Some of my family came to believe that it was the result of an immunization reaction and became anti-vaxxers. Now that I am grown and have my own child, I did vaccinate my child because I fully understand the massive public health benefits and the real risks of the diseases that immunizations protect us from. I will admit I was nervous when vaccinating my child, but I did it. Is it possible that some vaccines some of the time have had harmful side effects for a small number of people? Yes. Medical interventions and medications sometimes have side effects and occasionally very dangerous ones, and we need to acknowledge and understand them when they happen. But most of life is not black and white. While I will never know what killed my sibling, I have come to believe that the risks of not vaccinating are much greater. I am 31 and me and my siblings were never vaccinated. Reason: lazy parenting. I never really thought about vaccinations until I got pregnant and was asked. Turns out I am immune to chickenpox and got rubella shot while pregnant. Both my kids are now vaccinated. I haven't told my mom. I'm terrified she will excommunicate me from my family. I'm the oldest and I have very young sibling at home who I'm pretty close to. I don't want to risk my relationship with them over an argument I will never win. She is deeply entrenched into the anti-vax movement and believes every word. I tried to get myself vaccinated in high school and she acted like I was threatening to kill myself in front of her. She knew I was considering it when I had my own kid and sent me a million articles and Facebook posts proving it would hurt my baby. She threatened the light would go out of his eyes and that he would get allergies, learning disorders, SIDS, my biggest nightmare, etc. She thinks she won because I simply don't talk about anymore. If she says anything I keep my mouth shut. I haven't lied to her, but I also haven't told her that her perfect grandson gets his shots every few months. If I did tell her and by some miracle she still talked to me, anything and everything remotely wrong with my child would be because of vaccines. Has a tummy ache? Probably the vaccines. Has a rash? Probably the live chickenpox virus that I injected him with eating his brain. Has a mild allergy to almonds? Obviously those evil vaccines. Otherwise our relationship is good. But until my child is old enough to tell his grandma herself, she will not know. Hopefully by then she will be the one not willing to risk her relationship with her grandchild over her fear of the evil government mandated poison. But let me tell you, the brainwashing is real. Even after all of the research I did knowing it was the right thing to do, I cried my eyes out the night he got his first shot, terrified the worst would happen. I'm proud of you for doing it anyway. Go you. My parents refused to have me vaccinated as a newborn all the way up until I was about 7. As a result, I had whooping cough, pertussis, as a baby and came very near to death. Parents, please vaccinate your kids. I am getting my first vaccine in a month or so. I am traveling overseas and am getting vaccinated for food and waterborne diseases common in that area. I only just talked my mom into it after years. I am a minor. She has done a lot of ranting about how the vaccine industry makes money and tried to convince me to take her homeopathic inoculations at home. And a lot of warning me about how I might get sick and how lots of people have adverse reactions to vaccines. Someday I will probably get all the standard vaccines I should have had years ago, so I'm expecting more of the same. Ultimately though, I think she knows that I can inform myself and make my own decisions. My mum's a bit of a hippie, anti-vax, raised me and my siblings as vegetarians, took us to the homeopath instead of the doctor, that sort of stuff. When I joined the Air Force and they saw I had no medical history, I was basically treated like a pincushion at basic training. I had every vaccine going and I'm still not autistic. Who knew? I decided to give up being veggie and am more into science than spiritual healing. But she's respected my decisions and never even really mentioned it. Truth be told, I think she feels a bit ashamed of being naive. Not that she would ever admit it. My mom got pee. She didn't understand why I would take the risk, even though I ran into a rusty piece of metal and needed a tetanus shot. That's the only shot I ever even told her about too. I got all caught up on my flu shots as well but wasn't wanting to deal with her BS, so I never told her. My sister moved out of the country to teach abroad in South Korea and had to get multiple different shots before she could even leave the country. My mom was pissed at her too, telling her she wasn't making smart decisions. I love my mom, but goddang, she needs to rethink the whole anti-vax crap. My mom is anti-vaccination but didn't become that way until I was older, so I got all the ones I needed as a baby but not the boosters in elementary high school, but I also haven't bothered to get them as an adult. My sister vaccinated her kids but not until they were older, school age, and I think her waiting had a lot to do with my mom and her overly negative view on them. When she finally did it, I remember my mom saying things like, well, if she's gonna do it, at least they are older, more mentally developed. My mom is genuinely a good person and she doesn't go posting about it on Facebook or get in people's faces about it, but her and my other sister definitely are on the anti-vax train. My mother is just plain crazy when it comes to medical topics and thinks that hospitals and doctors only want your money. So I was never vaccinated. For a little insight into the craziness, when I was 14, I was a breath away from dying from a burst appendix. My mother refused to take me to the hospital despite the pain. It was only when I started urinating blood that my father said he was taking me to the hospital. I wad in and out of consciousness while he carried me to the car. My mom physically fought him as he carried me. I was medevaced to a larger hospital and had emergency surgery. The doctor told me in recovery that the infection was spreading to other organs, and my body was starting to shut down. If it had been a couple hours or more, it would have been too late. Fast forward 4 years later when I joined the army, the gauntlet of shots I received to get all the vaccinations was something else. I literally walked almost naked down a row with multiple medical staff on each side poking me with needles everywhere as I was told to keep walking forward and not stop. I am 35 now and feel just as healthy now as I did as a kid. Never had any other issues except for a hernia from strenuous exercise. Vaccinations do more good than harm. Your mom sounds like a right proper nut job, no offense. My mom made sure I got all my required vaccines and has always been very pro-vax. However, she bought into a lot of bull's articles online about the HPV vaccine, and for some reason that was the one vaccine I didn't end up getting, along with a couple final boosters. I'm 19 and still haven't gotten it, but quite frankly I probably should just to be safe. My mum was very anti-vax and would tell anyone who listened that the research behind them just wasn't sound. She's an academic. She would know, you see. Last year at a family friend's wedding she got into a deep conversation about the increase in autism and other conditions, relating them to vaccinations etc. They were kindred spirits on the topic. Shudder. A month later, there was a mumps outbreak at my work and we were told those without vaccinations could opt to get vaccinated or go on leave for 5-6 weeks. I believe in vaccines, have done my research, but never prioritized getting myself all sorted. So I used that as an excuse to get up to date with everything. Signed up for the National Immunization Register, paid out of pocket for the ones that weren't gov funded for my age group. When I told her on the phone, she responded after a long silence with, "I'm sure you got all of those when you were a kid, right? So all of the memories I have throughout my childhood of you telling me you were protecting me from the dangerous chemicals which were pushed through the system too fast without proper testing, those are all fabrications of my imagination. I was 15 when you sent me to school with a letter excluding me from the meningococcal vaccine. I still avoid conversations about vaccinations with her, that, and chemtrails." Mom was freaked out about the thimerosal mercury thing. Never got me vaccinated. Always got some kind of religious exemption even though we weren't Christian Scientists. Grew up, got vaccinations in my mid-20s. Haven't mentioned it. I don't get the sense she's still against them. She's not anti-doctor or medicine in general, but I think she freaked herself out with all the mid-80s drama about it. To be fair, some of the things she completely flipped out about in a similar manner turned out to be legit. She had an absolute heart attack when she caught me picking at and playing with old flaking paint chips that were likely leaded, and always insisted on getting filtered drinking water because the pipe quality in our area was hit or miss. So I think it was a similar situation. With the information she had, she made the best choice she could. I don't think she ever doubted vaccines worked or doubted the herd immunity side of it, but the choice in her mind was what's best for the overall herd at the possible expense of my only kid. I mentioned a few months ago I got a flu shot and she couldn't care less. We did always vaccinate our pets too, which in retrospect kinda makes me laugh. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.